Naruto was born to a civilian woman in a village filled with shinobi in a shinobi-run world. Her name was Mocha, and to Naruto she was his rock in life since he was bullied by many and had no friends to speak of within the village of Konoha. He never knew his father, but his mother would always tell him that his father was a great man, but she never told him who it was, and he grew curious as to whom he was as time went on. He had blonde hair and blue eyes, while his mother had silver hair and red eyes. While his mother seemed happy to him, he was not fooled by it since she cried herself to sleep nearly every night for reasons that he didn't understand, but then again he was only 5 years old, so it was understandable that he didn't know. He and his mother lived in poverty for all his childhood. They had just barely enough food to survive, and lived in a rundown one-bedroom apartment. Even though they lived in such a way, Naruto was happy since he had his mother and that was all he needed. She even read to him at night to help him go to sleep from a book that became his favorite, known as Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Shinobi, which she explained that he was named after the main character himself. She told him that he was destined for greatness and that he would accomplish so much in the future and make her proud. He had plans for the future to become a shinobi as well, like the character from the book he was named after, and earn enough money for them to live far better than they had been living, but things never went the way he wanted in the end. He would always go with his mother to work as a cleaning lady at a hotel on the edge of town, but one day she had him stay there while she walked off to an unknown destination. Naruto was curious as to where his mother went off to, so he followed her in secret. He followed her as she walked through the village and made her way towards the clan homes, but what confused him was the fact that she went to the gate of the 4th Hokage's mansion and used the intercom on the gate to try and talk to him. Naruto was too far to hear what was said, but he saw Minato come out of his home and yell at his mother for reasons he was unsure of. She got on her knees and begged with tears in her eyes, but all he did was slap her hard across the face and locked the gate behind him as he left her there in tears. Whatever he said to her that day shattered his mother in such a way that she never recovered. Naruto spent the next week and a half trying to cheer up his mother, who refused to even leave her bed as she wept consistently. It broke Naruto's heart to see her like this and tried everything he could to bring a smile to her face. But after those 2 weeks were over, she had passed on, and Naruto was all alone in the world. The village buried her in the cemetery, but only Naruto himself was there to see her buried with tears in his eyes that refused to stop. He returned to his home and fell to his knees in despair since he had nothing left. He grew angry about all of this and began to tear up the place in a fit of anger. He even punched the wall, and as he did he punched through a thin hollowed-out section of it. Inside of it was his mother's diary, and as he found it he once again cried since this was the only thing of his mother's he had left. She had sold most of everything else she had to feed the both of them. He eventually read the words written within the diary left by his mother, and as he read them his entire world turned upside down. His mother had been born into the second wealthiest family in all Fire Country, yet she had been rebellious to the way they wanted her to be. She was being groomed to become wed to a cousin of the Fire Daimyo, but she didn't want to be a wife to a man she didn't love. There was an event where she was kidnapped by a roving bandit group that had captured her en route to the capital to meet with her future husband. It was at this point that she was saved by at the time Chunin, Minato. She had been grateful for him rescuing her, and from there a secret relationship began. Soon she had ran away from home to be with him in secret since she had no intention of being married to a man who was twice her age, and as she did her family had disowned her for abandoning them. Yet while she had done this out of love for the man who had saved her life and had fallen for, Minato had done this out of greed. He had known that she was rich and wanted that money for himself. He was with her in secret to the point that Naruto was born, but when he had tried to use this as a means of legally claiming a portion of her family's money for himself, he learned that she was disowned and it was all for nothing. It wasn't really any skin off his back since he had married Kushina Uzumaki and had a child with her that was born 6 months after Naruto himself was born. Mocha had known only the life of a noble for most of her life, so working to support her son and herself was tough. She had gone back and begged her family for assistance, but they simply turned their backs towards her and told her to suffer alone before they had her forcefully removed from the property. She worked herself to the bone to provide what she could for her son, but eventually it got to her and she buckled under the pressure and went to the home of the man who essentially ruined her life and demanded aid for the child he sired. He had enough that day and slapped her and told her to stay away from his family, otherwise he would have her as well as Naruto killed if she ever came back. These were the final events that were written in the diary before it ended, and Naruto felt pure hatred and fury for the first time in his life. He survived the next 2 years by dumpster diving for food and scraps of clothes so he could sew his own clothes to wear. He was bullied and ridiculed for his appearance by all the children that came from clans who, though they were so much better than anyone else. But out of all the children who belonged to clans, the one who infuriated him the most was Naruko Uzumaki Namikaze, the daughter of the 4th Hokage and his half-sister. She picked on him the worst, and while he knew the truth of their relations she did not, nor did she care. Naruto made a vow to himself to become a shinobi that was far more infamous than Minato ever was, so as to ruin his reputation as he had done to his mother. But when he turned 8 and tried to enter the academy, he was denied multiple times for reasons he was unsure of. Minato didn't want him anywhere near his daughter and had signed the paperwork personally to deny him the chance to enter the academy at any point. He did so in fear that if Naruto were to ever find out about their relation to one another that he would try and attack Naruto if able. To be honest, that was exactly what Naruto was planning to do, but he never got the chance to do it. This broke Naruto further than he already was, and it was at this point that he knew that he was never going to make it in this village, so he packed up what little he had, and left the village in the middle of the night through the forest of death. It was here that his luck finally changed, since when he set up camp for the night in a hollow tree, he stepped outside to take a quick piss before he fell asleep. And it was at this point that a fruit hit him square on the head out of nowhere. It was a red heart-shaped fruit that looked like a strawberry. It had a stem with a swirling end pointing upwards, and its surface was covered with swirling patterns. The fruit was small enough to hold in his hand and not one to look a gift horse in the mouth. He ate the fruit whole. He immediately regretted it afterwards, since it was the worst tasting thing he had ever eaten in his life. He felt queasy after he ate it, and so he went to his makeshift bed and fell asleep to try to sleep it off. And as he slept, he was unaware of the changes his body was undertaking at the moment. In the morning he quickly packed up his belongings and set out for a new life once more, but it was not much later that he was attacked by a pack of wolves. He pulled out his kunai he had to protect himself, and as he did they all charged in to rip him apart, but while all seemed lost for the boy, he tapped into his unknown power on instinct alone. A clear dome of energy surrounded him and the wolves, and with it in place Naruto was able to kill at least half the wolves by cutting them to pieces. But the strange thing was they weren't necessarily dead, since while they were cut to pieces they still were alive somehow and moving about. Naruto in the end suffered several massive wounds, but he was an 8-year-old with no training whatsoever, so the fact he had survived this long was impressive and spoke volumes about his future. He fell to his knees with tears in his eyes as he used his hand to stem the blood flowing from the wound on his shoulder. To him it seemed the world was cruel and going to kill him right here and now, with these wolves being the instrument of his death. But as he knelt there, the anger inside of him grew, and as it did, a forgotten power thought lost to time came to be released upon the world once more. Naruto screamed out in rage as the wolves attacked once more, but they only got halfway to him before they collapsed onto the ground with foam coming out of their mouths. Naruto looked on in surprise, since he was unsure as to what happened just now, but he then smiled as it did, since he knew he had a gift that was unlike anything else that he had ever seen. But if he wanted to train with it, then he would have to survive his wounds now, and it seemed like that wasn't going to happen since he was losing too much blood. He walked slowly for several minutes before he fell over and passed out from blood loss, unaware that a man had felt his power and took an interest in it. He found the person who used such power and saw that the boy was in desperate need of medical attention, so he picked him up and took him to get said medical attention. He took Naruto to a man he knew had medical training, but was told that the boy needed a blood transfusion. The blood transfusion itself was not an issue, it was the fact that he was lacking in the specific blood needed for Naruto, so the man offered his own in return since the doctor used up what little he had on Naruto. So he hooked up the gear and performed the transfusion without complications of any sort. Naruto woke up a bit later and immediately grew defensive since he was in a strange place and there was a stranger there looking over him. The man calmed him down by waving his hands in a comical sense and told Naruto his name was Faust and that he was a doctor of sorts. Faust's associate appeared and told Naruto that Faust may be a doctor, but he was the one who helped him. Faust went on to explain that he quit being a doctor after he lost a little girl as a patient long ago and had traveled the world over trying to find a purpose. He had stumbled upon the kid by sheer coincidence, and had felt pity for him and had decided to help. Faust offered to take Naruto home if he wished, but Naruto simply told him that he didn't have a home and explained what had happened in his life. Faust took pity on him once more and offered to teach him the ways of a doctor such as he, since now that Faust's blood flowed through his veins, he now had a few of his abilities such as conjuring up the door that led to his interdimensional operating room as well as conjuring of items in his possession as well as storing them away for later. Naruto took the offer and began his training as a Faust's apprentice. Faust helped him to understand how to use his own power through experiments that Naruto wanted to participate in. He learned much about the powers he gained from the fruit he ate, and learned it was with that power alone that he was able to surpass even Faust in his field of expertise. He had also learned that because of the blood that the doctor gave him he was gifted a bloodline that allowed him to control blood in various ways, which he used more for medical purposes than for fighting. Naruto was 13 years old when Faust finally left Naruto to take on the world himself, and Naruto thanked him for all he learned. So he traveled around the elemental countries to make a name for himself, and succeeded to do just that. In his travels he helped many a person by healing what others considered untreatable. At first he was given the nickname, the Miracle Worker, but that soon changed when a group of missing nin came to try and force him to heal an associate of theirs. Naruto was not one to do things for free like they demanded and told them to pay the fee if they wanted his aid. They tried to coerce him via force to do as they wanted, but Naruto simply smirked and slaughtered them all without mercy. Naruto had multiple tricks up his sleeve, many of which that he didn't use yet since he didn't need to. He used two separate weapons in a fight. Naruto's primary weapons are a set of very long razor wires attached to gloves, which he controlled as if they were extensions of his own body. The wires are sharp enough to slice through steel and concrete with no trouble, yet he can also use them to bind and restrain targets without damaging them. He can move objects without damaging them, being able to apply enough force to rip or to grab a packet of cigarettes that he began to smoke since they calmed his nerves, and a surgeon must be calm to perform surgeries such as he did from time to time. He was also able to hold several of the wires between his teeth without any damage to himself. The wires themselves can be used to attack from virtually any angle, and seem to hover around Naruto himself in an omnidirectional manner during combat. He was able to cause drastic shifts in their positions with extremely small movements, and even manipulate them without any apparent movement at all. The wires move much more quickly than even Naruto himself does, and are extremely hard to see with the naked eye. He was also able to release wires from his control, so that the wires could suspend people in midair while not attached to his gloves. He also showed the ability to have the wires encircle him as he walked around without any contact with them. The wires were shown to span at least the width of a typical skyscraper. The limit to the number of wires Naruto can summon was not known to even him. The second weapon he used was one that he used effectively. This was a cane he had that was extendable to the point that it was his own height as well as had a skull on the tip with its mouth open. He had this cane made when he was 10 by a weaponsmith in Iron Country. The metal had come from a meteor and had been picked up by a merchant who saw the value in it. Naruto had gone to the merchant for a few herbs that the merchant's wife grew so he could use them to work on various antitoxins, but when he saw the metal he wanted it since he knew that he could use it to make something cool with it. Yet the price was far too high and he didn't have the money to pay for it, so he took the herbs he came for and left. A few months later, though, the merchant's wife fell ill and the town's doctor told him there was no cure for what she was afflicted with. The man went into a depression that Naruto picked up on when he visited once more for his weekly batch of herbs. Naruto easily healed his wife free of charge since they had been so nice to him over the years and he helped friends when needed. The man was so grateful for him healing her that he gave Naruto the metal from the meteor as a gift. Once in his possession, he took it to be made into the staff he used now. The staff itself was only part of his weapon since he used the bloodline he gained from his blood transfusion to turn his cane into various weapons such as spears, axes, or his personal favorite, scythes. Hence the nickname, Surgeon of Death, since while he had the power to heal, he could also kill without mercy. His name became infamous to all 5 major villages, and each of them searched him out in an effort to recruit him to their villages, But he was so very elusive when he wanted to be. The only village he had ever entered since he became the way he was Iwa. And the reason he went there was the fact that he saved the life of Onoki as well as his granddaughter. They had been ambushed by rude shinobi who had come for Kuritsuchi for breeding her bloodline, and they poisoned Onoki to weaken him and would have succeeded if it wasn't for Naruto's intervention. He killed them all and took Onoki into his interdimensional operating room to extract the poison from his system. While he was there, he also fixed his spine through his power to fix the several cracks in his spine so he no longer suffered pain. Once all was said and done, Onoki had been grateful for his help and offered him a chance to join with their village. Naruto had kindly declined since he explained that as a surgeon he wished to remain free to aid those who needed his help. So while he was not an official shinobi of their village, the people still treated him as such since he visited often to aid those in need. All the while he was oblivious to the glances he got from Kuritsuchi. In time, Naruto found a group that he traveled with who were a pack of missing nin on the run from their own village. And while he traveled with them, he healed them from the various wounds they suffered. These people became family to him, with the female of the group becoming his girlfriend after he saved her from being raped after she was captured by Hunter Nin. And after a bit afterward that Naruto left to take on another job while the others went towards Wave to complete their own. He had been sought out to heal a famous actress since apparently a fan of hers shot her in the neck with a poisonous senbon. He operated on her and easily extracted the poison, but to do so he had to use his power to keep her alive so as to extract all her blood down to the last drop and infuse her with more so she didn't die. He did this so that there was no chance of the poison somehow remaining in her system. Plus there was the added bonus of being able to identify the poison and make an antitoxin for it. While she was sleeping it off to recover from the operation, her manager came to him and explained that it wasn't a fan that poisoned her but an agent of her uncle who was sent to kill her so that she could not take her rightful place on the throne as Daimyo Od Snow Country. He offered him even more to assist him in bringing her home safely and protecting them from harm as a bodyguard. He accepted, but under the agreement of citizenship for him and his group since they had no place to call home and were tired of running. The terms were accepted and so Naruto became the bodyguard of Koyuki. They were attacked by her uncle Dodo and his shinobi, and as they were, Naruto easily dispatched them. Dodo had tried to use this as a distraction to try and quickly grab Koyuki and run away, but Naruto easily cut the cable connecting his grappling hook that he used before he grabbed it midair and dropped it, since even though he cut the cable it was still flying through the air at such a fast pace, so it was still dangerous. Dodo had tried to use the kunai launchers in his train to kill the lot of them, but Naruto used the wires in his gloves to create a protective web that protected them all. Dodo then used his airship to try to escape, but Naruto once more used his wires to cut it into scrap. Dodo fell from the wreckage and was caught with the wires and held in midair. Once there, he used a seal that he had developed to siphon the blood of anyone he placed it on, since it was a waste to just kill someone when you could get so much life-saving blood out of them before their end. Once he was killed from lack of blood, Naruto led the group he was with towards the machine her father made to turn the land of snow into the land of spring. And as was agreed upon, he was made a citizen with 4 scrolls to give his friends the same rights as him. As he left, he got a kiss on the cheek from the newly instated Koyuki. He then packed up some supplies and made his way towards Wave to meet up with his group, and it is here that the story takes place. Incomplete bridge, Wave Country. Kakashi was breathing heavily after his fight with the missing nin Zabuza, and as he made a mental note to up his training when he got back to the leaf, and looked around in the mist for Zabuza since the man had used a jutsu to summon it so he could hide within it. His Sharingan for the first time in Kakashi's recent memory had failed the Junin, as he could not detect Zabuza due to the climate he was in, and was concerned about his students losing to Zabuza's apprentice. This mist is thicker than the last time we fought. He's hiding in it and waiting for me to make a mistake so he can chop me in half with that sword of his, thought Kakashi, as he had to use his other senses to keep up with the demon of the mist, and to make sure his students were in one piece at the same time. Naruto and Sasuke were currently battling Haku while Sakura stayed with Tazuna in order to make sure he had some form of protection if Zabuza tried to get near him. However, considering Sakura's lack of skills, the missing nin could easily go after her, and then take care of the client in a single moment. Zabuza then tried to slice him in half with a swing from behind. Kakashi took this moment to use a substitution and appeared behind him to dodge it. While he continued to fight against the demon of the mist, Naruto and Sasuke were suffering under Haku's ice bloodline. She had stuck them with hundreds of ice senbon. This infuriated the two of them since they had been trained into the ground by their parents, Minato for Naruto and Makoto, the only Uchiha to survive the massacre besides Sasuke, into thinking that they were the best, and yet out of nowhere this bitch was besting them. Naruto had to call upon the power of the Kyuubi to finally shatter her ice mirrors and pin this bitch to the ground. While the first part worked, the second did not, since it was an ice clone that shattered upon contact into even more ice senbon. These hit her in her nerves that paralyzed her. Sasuke used his newly awakened Sharingan to see where she was hiding and used a fire jutsu to force her out of hiding before slamming her into the ground hard. "You are fairly strong," said Sasuke as he held her there, "and I think I'll take you back to my village to help me restore my clan." "My boyfriend is going to kill you for even thinking that," said Haku with a scowl and glare on her face. "Well, it's too bad that your boyfriend isn't here," said Sasuke with a sinister on his face. "And once I have a Yamanaka digs through your mind and changes your mind by force, you will forget all about your pathetic boyfriend and know how it feels to be with a real man. Would you care to repeat that, you son of a bitch?" said a voice behind him before the person who said that hit him hard across the head with a golf swing. The person grabbed Haku by the hand and helped her back onto her feet. As she did, she pulled the person by the shirt into a kiss. "Where have you been?" Haku asked with a grin on her face. "The job I took lasted longer than expected," said the figure as he smiled back at her, "but why are you complaining? I thought you liked it when I kept you waiting." Haku blushed as she heard this. The person wore a simple black suit with a white shirt underneath, short black gloves with a skull painted on them, and gray steel-toed shoes. He donned a pair of black trousers held up by two red belts. He completed the outfit with a black fedora hat that sat atop his blonde hair to close the shady visage. "Now if you will excuse me, I will finish the job that you personally told me that you didn't need help with in the first place." "The job was supposed to be simple," said Haku with a sweat drop, "but we didn't expect to face a Namikaze along with Kakashi, who is the student of the 4th Hokage. Things went south fast since the other two were killed by them. You know, I was just about to ask where the two of them were, but you just answered my question." "I don't know just who the fuck you think you are," said Sasuke as he growled in fury at being struck from behind, "but I will kill you." "Sharingan, huh?" said Naruto with a raised eyebrow, "so you must Sasuke Uchiha." "How the hell do you know who I am?" asked Sasuke in confusion. "Has my name become that famous already?" "No," said Naruto simply as he shook his head, "I simply heard your name through the mouth of your older brother Itachi." "Itachi?" growled Sasuke, "where is he?" "Oh, you are so easy to anger," said Naruto with a smirk, "and to think that your brother honestly thought that you would be the one to avenge him." "Wait, what?" asked Sasuke with a shocked look on his face. "You see, your brother belonged to a group of S-ranked shinobi known as the Akatsuki. As my name became more infamous, they sought me out to recruit me into their group. To make a long story short, they don't take rejection well and tried to kill me. And well, as you can plainly see, they failed. There is no way that you killed Itachi." "Then where did I get his eyes?" said Naruto as his eyes morphed into the Mangekyo Sharingan that had once belonged to Itachi Uchiha. Over the years, Naruto had begun to wonder if other bloodlines could be transferred like the one he had gotten when he got his blood abilities from a blood transfusion. He tried and in time had success in doing so with a few of them. He also managed to splice his own eyes with the genetics of Itachi for his Sharingan, which helped him notice so much more in his operations than he was capable of doing before. "You bastard!" shouted Sasuke as he charged forward with a kunai to cut him down. Haku yelled at him to move, but Naruto simply stood his ground. The kunai struck true and pierced his chest and into his heart, or at least where his heart should have been. "Well, at least you know your vital areas," said Naruto as he pulled Sasuke's arm from his chest with the kunai still being held. He then kicked him in the chest with enough force to blast him a few yards backwards and fall to his knees in pain. "How are you still alive?" asked Sasuke as he was confused about it. He had stabbed him in the heart, for Christ's sake. "While it is true that you stabbed me in the right place," said Naruto as he held out his left hand. In it was a clear cube that contained a still beating heart within it. But the problem with that was that my heart wasn't there to be stabbed through. He then pulsed energy through his hand and it disappeared from his hand and went back to its proper place. He twitched his fingers a bit, and doing so caused his wires to grab a hold of his limbs and hold him into place. "What the hell is this?" asked Sasuke as he tried in vain to move but could not. "Just who the hell are you?" "Hold that thought for a brief second," said Naruto as he clicked his fingers. "Room." As he said that, a dome of energy arose that surrounded the immediate area. Shambles. When he said that, he switched places with Zabuza, who had been captured by two ninja dog summons and was about to be killed by Kakashi via a Raikari to the chest. But now he had switched places with Naruto, who simply held up his staff to meet the attack. Kakashi ended up hitting the skull on the end, and as he did, blood covered his hand and solidified so he couldn't break free from it. He then twisted his cane to the left, breaking a bone in his body so that his arm was useless at the moment. He then swung him around and released him at an angle that he flew through the air and crashed right into Sakura. "Zabuza, are you alright?" asked Naruto as he placed his cane on his shoulder. "Yeah kid," said Zabuza as he got to his feet and brushed off the dirt on him. Naruto simply walked over to where they were as he did. "Good to see I wasn't too late to save the two of you. But what exactly is the job here?" "We were hired to kill the bridge builder over there," said Zabuza as he pointed to the old man who was literally shaking in his shoes out of fear. Then again, it was of no surprise to Naruto since he had basically defeated the man's hired help. "Well then allow me to finish this so we can get paid and leave already." "Stay away from him," said Sasuke as he was still trying to escape the wires holding him. "Oh right," said Naruto as he looked at Sasuke, "then there is you. You see, there are many things I can easily forgive, but to state how you were going to rape my girlfriend to bear your bastard children is quite literally the dumbest of things to say to her or me. So now while I could easily just kill you where you are, I have something far worse in mind." Room. Once the dome was in place, Naruto pulled out a vial of blood that he broke in his hand and formed the pool of blood into two small spike balls. And in a sleight of hands, the spike balls were then replaced with two grayish ovals that were in his hand. "You see these, Sasuke," said Naruto with a grin on his face. "These are your testicles that I just replaced with spike balls. So good luck trying to reproduce when you have no testicles to produce the sperm you need." He then kicked Sasuke in the crotch, which caused him immense amounts of pain that he cried out from. When he kicked him, the wires holding him in place loosened and he was sent backwards. He held his crotch area since it was now bleeding heavily from the spikes that were inside him. And now that that is done, let's end this once and for all. Naruto activated his Sharingan and used another blood vial to form the sharp tip on the edge of his cane so that it became a spear. With a sudden surge of speed he charged forward to kill Tazuna, but right when it was mere centimeters from killing him, Naruto stopped. "It's your lucky day, old man, for you get to live to see another day." Naruto then twirled his cane so that the blood at the tip flew up into the air, but he caught it with another vial. This one was empty though. "Why did you stop?" asked Tazuna in surprise since he was not sure if this was some sort of trick or not. "Because it seems like our employer has seen fit to betray us for some reason," said Naruto as he walked away, but he stopped after a few seconds. "Also, you may want to cut back on the drinking since your kidney is about to shut down. So take one of these for the next month and you will be fine," said Naruto as he pulled out a small bag of pills and tossed him to Tazuna, who caught them while still having his shocked look on his face. "How did you?" started Tazuna before Naruto stopped him. "Trust me, I'm a doctor," said Naruto with a grin on his face. Naruto quickly rejoined his companions, who were surprised that Gato had appeared and was there with an army of hired thugs surrounding him. So the big bad demon of the mist has been defeated by a bunch of Konoha shinobi, with most of them being mere brats. I should have known your reputation didn't match up to your skills. You are all hype, Zabuza. A little baby demon thinking he has the biggest stick to swing, mocked Gato, as he had appeared with his army of bandits behind him, and all itching for a fight to earn their cash. He saw that Zabuza as well as his assistant were out of breath with wounds on them. Sure, there were others who were all defeated as well, but seeing that there was one still in good fighting condition, it seemed like they failed in the job that he had hired them to do. "Gato, so you were going to backstab us?" "The rumors were true," snarled Zabuza, as he had been told by Haku about the various rumors that she had overheard about him backstabbing people to not pay them. Zabuza had thought that they could easily overcome this since they were strong and the job was supposed to be easy after all, But things happened that weren't supposed to, and so he was not in the best condition to fend off so many people at once. So what if they are? Ninja are expensive. I shouldn't have to pay for a few of you when buying in bulk and cheap is a much better investment. Especially if the ninjas in question are too damn weak to fight back against my boys here and too stupid to see a trap when it is staring them right in the face. Besides, a missing nin such as yourself is a liability, and the fact you even went to me for a job was a mistake on your part, countered Gato with a grin on his face while looking at the weakened form of Haku. Not as bad as yours, I fear, replied Naruto with the mist clearing fully since Zabuza stopped it as Naruto walked ahead of the two of them. Who are you? Asked Gato with Naruto looking at him calmly and twirled his cane with the one hand. Me? Surely my attire speaks for itself, Gato. I am fairly well known throughout the countries, replied Naruto with Gato's eyes narrowing before they widened in shock and then laughed at him. So a punk kid such as you is the infamous Surgeon of Death? Asked Gato as he and his men laughed. Well, it's all good that you are all laughing, said Naruto with a sinister smile on his face, since they say that laughter is the best medicine. But I think I have something far better. Naruto then pulled out a large vial that was the size of a softball and filled with his own blood. He then threw the bottle into the air. With a glint of light, the vial shattered from a wire, breaking it, and the blood within rained down onto the crowd. Once there, the thugs tried to wipe it off, but blood is not easy to remove without water or the like. Naruto then clapped his hands together and then pulled them apart, doing so ripped the blood out of the bodies of the thugs. Yet Gato was still alive in the middle of all the carnage. He formed the blood into a cage that surrounded him so that he couldn't run away from his fate. Naruto had trained as well as experimented with his abilities, and he had learned that with the right amount of his own blood, which was not much by the way, he was able to infect his opponent and control the blood within them to do all sorts of crazy things such as what he did. He usually only did this to those who were rotten to the core since it was fairly gruesome, and Gato and his thugs fit that bill quite perfectly. I'm gonna say this one time and one time only, said Zabuza as he saw this and actually felt a bit jealous since he was supposed to be the demon of mist and this guy had just outdone his gruesome kills to graduate from his class. You are one scary motherfucker. I try not to be, said Naruto with a side smile, but to people like this I have to make a statement towards. Please, begged Gato in fear of dying, I have plenty of money. Just name your price to not kill me. Name my price, huh, said Naruto in thought. How much do you have on you? Gato shakenly pulled out his wallet and pulled out around 20,000 he had on his person at all times. Naruto just grinned as he activated his room and swiped the money from his hand. Well, this is your lucky day, said Naruto as he pocketed the money after counting it, since this is enough for me not to kill you. Gato breathed a sigh of relief as he heard that, but was shocked to see Naruto have a heart appear in his hands. He then tossed it towards Zabuza. Kill him. Wait, said Gato in shock, you said you wouldn't kill me? And I am a man of my word, said Naruto as he walked away. Zabuza will be the one to do it. Zabuza then pulled out kunai and stabbed the heart. As he did, Gato clutched his chest in pain as his heart bled out and died with a look of immense pain on his face. Naruto then walked back towards Tazuna and handed the money he was given to him. I believe that at least some of this belongs to you. Why are you helping me like this? Because I'm a doctor, said Naruto with a shrug of his shoulders, and I like to help people. Gato was a cancer upon this land, and like any good doctor I cut it out so the body which is this land can heal in time. But I'm serious about the cutting back on the drinking. Naruto walked back towards Zabuza and his group, but was stopped by Tazuna calling out to him. Wait, what is your name? I am Naruto, the Surgeon of Death, said Naruto as he continued to walk forward. He handed Zabuza and Haku the scrolls that were given to him to give them. They read the contents and smiled. Haku kissed Naruto since he had fulfilled his promise he made to her that he would find them a place to finally settle down so they were no longer on the run. And yet when they turned to leave, their way was blocked by Kakashi, Naruto, as well as Sakura, but she was shaking in fear. You have harmed the heir of a prestigious clan of Konoha, said Kakashi as he uncovered his Sharingan, so you will come with us to face trial for your crimes. Do you really think I care that the son of a bitch is from a clan? Asked Naruto with a raised eyebrow, because when someone threatens to rape my girlfriend I don't give a damn about that sort of thing. You will come with us regardless, shouted Naruto in anger. She was not going to allow the bitch who paralyzed her get away like this. Now while she would usually be against such a thing, her pride overcame her feminine pride and wanted to see her suffer for her transaction. "Naruko Uzumaki Namikaze," said Naruto through grated teeth and tight clenched fists. "We meet again, dear sister." "Sister?" asked Naruko in confusion since she had no siblings. "What are you talking about?" "Ask our father," said Naruto as he glared at her. While he wanted to hurt her to send a message to his bastard father, his friend and girlfriend needed a quick checkup to make sure they were fine. So he summoned up the doorway to his interdimensional operating room and opened it up so they could go inside. "Until next we meet, bitch." And with that he slammed the door shut behind him and it disappeared right when Kakashi has rushed forward to open the door. They all had looks of confusion on their faces, and this was the scene that the people of Wave arrived to once they had gathered to fight Gato and his men. Naruto could only smirk to himself as the door to his interdimensional operating room disappeared. He had not expected to see his half-sister so soon but he was honestly glad he had since he had planted the seeds of doubt in her mind about their shared father. While it may be true that she would just push what he said to her aside and forget about it, but he knew that there would always be that small inkling of a doubt and it would begin to haunt her in time. But those were thoughts for later since he had to give his friend and girlfriend a quick checkup to make sure they were okay. Haku had a few bruises, but he had a cream that eliminated them easily enough. He had worked on the formula for quite some time since he had so many himself from all his medical training as well as the experiments he ran on himself. He was lucky that he got the power that he had from what he learned was cursed fruit since the experiments he did to himself would have killed him multiple times over if a normal doctor had done them. So through much trial and error he made this cream that could completely heal any and all bruising within moments of applying it. Once applied, Naruto kissed her on the cheek tenderly, which caused her to blush a bit before she grabbed his head and moved it into position so that she was able to kiss him on the lips. As she did this, Zabuza began to silently growl as he saw this. Haku was, even though he would never admit this to anyone on the simple fact that he had a reputation as a scary-ass sword using shinobi to maintain and any form of lovey-dovey kind of crap would all but ruin if not completely shatter that image, his adopted daughter and all but name. He had plans to make it official when he was able to, but as any father would he was fairly picky about whom his daughter dated. Now while he had planned to make Naruto fight him, or any other boy for that matter, for the privilege to date Haku so as to prove that they were strong enough to protect her, he was never able to since when he had objected to their relationship Naruto had not taken his interference well. Naruto had used his power to decapitate him and literally, not metaphorically, but literally shoved his head up his ass and left it there for a bit. Haku had laughed herself to literal tears as she saw her father figure running around like a headless chicken as he tried to make sense of just what in the hell was happening to him since it was honestly the funniest thing she had ever seen in her entire life. Naruto laughed as well as he left the man like that for about 20 minutes before he reversed the damage done. Zabuza looked at Naruto in utter fear after he calmed down. To make a long story short, Zabuza never voiced his opinion about their relationship again after that since he never wanted that to happen to him again. Zabuza's wounds were a bit more extreme since he had a few broken ribs that needed to be fixed. Sure, they would heal naturally on their own, but with his power he was able to precisely cut open his chest and pulled out the broken ribs. Even though this was not the first time they had been under the knife, for Zabuza at least since Haku never sustained a wound that needed such a procedure since most of what she got was a few stabs which Naruto stitched up and used medical chakra to eliminate any scarring so there was no indication that the wound had been there. But even though they had seen this before, it was still fairly shocking to say the least since it was not natural. But then again if you think about it, neither is spitting out entire tidal waves nor conjuring ice like Haku could. Naruto took the several ribs that needed fixing and used his wires to cut them into pieces. Once in pieces he doused them in a calcium-heavy paste he used to repair bones and reassembled them back to that they once were before he used chakra to make them whole once again. Once fully formed, Naruto then stabbed them back into their proper place and sewed the wound shut as well as using his salve to eliminate the scars. Zabuza remembered the first time Naruto operated on him since he had so many scars that Naruto had simply eliminated quite easily. "Okay," said Naruto as he took his gloves off and placed them in a container with a strong disinfecting solution to clean them off. He put them in there for a minute before he took them back out and put them back on. He was a surgeon after all, so he did keep his workplace as well as his equipment clean and sanitized for future use. It was one of the first things that Faust had taught him, and the lesson stuck fairly easily. The operation room was fairly large, 4 times bigger than a standard hospital, with 2 side rooms with their own doors connecting them to the main one. The main room had the operating table as well as the tools he needed, as well as various medical equipment to assist in surgery. One of the doors was a thick metallic one. This one led into the freezer where he stored all the blood he had collected to be used for transfusions, all sorted by type of course. The other one was simply wooden, and this one led into his personal laboratory, where he performed as well as documented his successful and failed experiments. This room was just as big as the operating room but was more cluttered with various tubes and jars all over. Now that you are all checked out, shall we head back out? So enlighten me as to where exactly we are heading out to exactly, asked Zabuza as he stood up and stretched to loosen his muscles up a bit. Apparently getting cut open like he was stiffened the muscles, so he needed to loosen up. Ah yes, said Naruto as he put his hands behind his back and pulled out 2 of the 4 scrolls he was gifted by Koyuki not too long ago. While I was doing my own mission that I was hired to do, I gained favor with the newly instated daimyo of the now named Spring Country. Where is Spring Country? Asked Zabuza with a raised eyebrow, or at least raised area where the eyebrow was usually located, since he didn't have any to speak of. Ah yes, said Naruto with a chuckle, good story, long one actually, but a machine was built to eliminate the snow. I thought you said it was a long story. Oh, it is, said Naruto as he pulled out his cane and bopped Zabuza on the top of the head with it. Zabuza rubbed the top of his head as he growled about being treated like a kid there. But I just wanted to simplify it on the off chance you didn't want me to explain it fully. I'm actually curious, said Haku as she pulled out a chair and sat upon it. Would it explain how exactly you managed to acquire 2 fully functional Sharingan? Wait, said Zabuza as he held up his hand to stop them from going further with the story. You have Sharingan now? That I do, said Naruto with a smirk as his eyes changed to show that he did indeed have them. So are you interested in my story now? Very much so, said Zabuza as he leaned his blade up against the wall and sat down himself. Cause from what I heard there are only 2 Uchiha left in the world with access to such eyes, as well as Kakashi who has 1, but he is still alive, and you have 2, so that eliminates him, and that Uchiha Brat is still alive as well, so that leave only 1 person. So explain exactly how the hell you managed to kill Itachi Uchiha? With pleasure, said Naruto with a grin as he began to recount his story. Snow Country 1 week earlier. Naruto was standing guard on the ship that housed him as well as a film crew and the very person he had been hired to protect. She had been a handful at first when they had first met, since she had tried to run away from them multiple times, but Naruto had simply been there to cut her off every time that she tried to flee. In the end, Koyuki had given up and began to become pissed that she wasn't able to escape him. He invited her to a nearby bar, where he bought drinks for the both of them. Once she began to drink, Koyuki was more open about her situation and explained that why she didn't want to go back home. She had lost her father when her uncle had him murdered so as to take control of the country, and she had escaped with the help of shinobi that had been hired to get her out of the country to safety and had become an actress over the years. She didn't want to go back since she was afraid that she would suffer the same fate as her father if she went back. Naruto told her about his own past since they were in the mood to talk openly. He explained how he had been born into nothing, yet he was truly happy since he had his mother in his life to help cope with the cruelty of the world. But he had lost her when he was 5 and suffered from bullying as well as ridicule twice as much as before when she was still alive. And to make it worse was the fact that there was no one else to help him get over it. He mentioned that the reason he did as he did by helping people was so that no one else had to feel that sort of pain. He even mentioned that if he was able to, that he would sacrifice his power, all that he owned, and become poor as he was in his youth once more if it would bring her back. But that was not possible, so he made his mother proud by helping others as he did. Koyuki took his words to heart, and agreed that she needed to go back and help those who needed that, but she was still afraid of her uncle since he had so many people under his employ that would kill her without remorse on his order. Naruto simply smiled at her and patted her on the shoulder as he stated that that was the exact reason why he was there, since having someone of his skills would be more than enough. They had one more drink before they went. This one they had with the bartender though, since Naruto insisted on it, and once done Naruto paid the bill and they left. What Naruto didn't tell either of them was that he secretly poisoned the bartender's drink before he drank it. The poison was slow, but lethal since it was a special one he had made, and as such he was the only one with the antidote to it. The reason for this was the fact that Naruto was easily aware of the fact that the man had been secretly hired by Dodo to poison her. Naruto had been easily aware of the fact since he tasted it when he drank it. He spiked her drink with the proper antidote so that they could drink in peace since it did them good in the end. And as they left to head back towards the rest of their group, Naruto was clearly aware of the pair of men quietly following them wearing black robes with red clouds on them. So here they were now, as Koyuki slept in her room so that she would be refreshed for the morning shoot. Sure, they were heading back to the palace so that she could reclaim her rightful place as the daimyo of the country, but they were still shooting a movie as they made their way there. Naruto stood guard in front of her door as he had a little black book of his out and was writing in it. He had two, since one was for writing down his ideas for further use since it was easy to forget things, and the second one was his appointment book since he was requested by plenty of people. The problem with that was that he needed to gather various materials so as to treat people. His powers alone could not heal, but it allowed him to get to the affected areas easily so that he could heal them. He still needed the proper materials. Lucky for him, he had people he got his materials from and paid plenty for their best, which they gladly gave him since he was willing to pay top dollar for them. Koyuki as well as her manager had been worried about him since he was keeping himself awake with no sleep, but Naruto showed them a pill he made that cancelled out the negative effects of lack of sleep. He made it since there were those days where he wanted to finish his research, but drowsiness set in and he had to stop, but not by choice. So as Koyuki slept peacefully since she felt safe with Naruto guarding her, he finished up what he was drawing and closed his book before storing it away for later. He pulled out a special seal that he formed with ink mixed with his own blood and used several of them to seal the door he was guarding shut. While he may know how to make a few powerful seals, he was regretfully nowhere near as good at it as those from the Uzumaki clan were and currently are, but he made do with the few he did know. Once in place, he walked over to the edge of the boat and saw the film crew finishing up their preparations for the morning shoot. Naruto smiled since these people were dedicated to their work since there was an actual threat of being attacked by enemy shinobi and yet they still did their job. Naruto pulled out his cane and began to walk down the cold shore to his destination. He twirled it as he walked and whistled a tune as he did. It took about 10 minutes to reach where he was going, and as he did he saw the small boat that had been tailing them for the past couple of days. Naruto used his foot to kick around the snow until he found a rock. He picked it up and tossed it in his hands a few times before he tossed it towards the only window on the ship. "And there goes our deposit," said a voice behind Naruto. He turned around and saw two figures standing there behind a tree. One of them was a fairly tall man of fair complexion. He had onyx eyes, under which were long, pronounced tear troughs. He had jet black hair that was pulled back in a low ponytail and his face was framed with center-parted bangs that extended to his chin. He wore the standard Akatsuki cloak that was black with red clouds and a slashed Konoha forehead protector to symbolize his broken ties with the village. The cloak's high collar obscured his ponytail. The second man was a very tall, muscular shinobi, and was the taller than the first man. He had a distinctive shark-like appearance, complete with pale, green skin. He had small, round, white eyes, 3 sets of curved facial markings under his eyes, gills on his shoulders, and sharp triangular teeth. "Just out of personal curiosity," said Naruto as he placed his cane on his shoulder since he didn't feel any killing intent from them, which was why he wanted to know why they were following him and his group. He was sure that they were not here for the princess, so that simply raised more questions for him. "How much did you pay to rent that boat?" "Too much," said the shark-like man with a growl as he remembered the negotiations, "since I'm fairly certain we were swindled by that man." "Yeah," said Naruto, "and that is the reason I don't rent things. I buy so I don't get swindled and can use said thing as much as I want." "We are getting off track, Kisame," said the dark-haired man. "And you are?" asked Naruto with a raised brow. "I am Itachi Uchiha," said the now-named shinobi. "The infamous Uchiha from Konoha who killed all his clan except for his brother." "The same," said Itachi with a quick nod. "So what brings the infamous Itachi to follow me all the way out here to freeze in the snow?" asked Naruto since he was still curious as to what the hell was going on but was unable to figure it out. "Do you need medical treatment of any sort?" Since if that is the case, then we can discuss price. But be warned that all prices are set and are completely non-negotiable. That is not the reason that we are here, said Itachi as he held up a hand to stop the conversation. We are here on the orders of our leader to recruit you into our organization. Which is? Asked Naruto since he was still in the dark about it. The Akatsuki. Ah, said Naruto since he had heard about them as he traveled about. He knew that they were mercenaries of sorts since they were S-ranked shinobi who worked for the highest bidder. I see. So will you accept our invitation? Asked Itachi in a monotone voice. No, said Naruto simply as he shook his head. Any particular reason as to why you don't wish to join us? Because I am not in need to hide like those in your organization. Said Naruto simply, since you are all S-ranked missing nin and I am nothing more than a well-known surgeon. I have no need to hide since I answer to no one, nor is there a price on my head. Plus the fact that by staying independent I keep all the money I earn for myself instead of having to share it with the group. Okay, you little shit, said Kisame as he prepared his blade in preparation for a fight. To be honest, he was hoping that there was one since the adrenaline would warm up his body since the cold played hell with his blood. Let me put this in a way that you will understand. Either you work for us or else your career as a doctor ends today where you stand. So you have resorted to threatening me now, said Naruto with a sinister grin on his face. Itachi felt a bit unsettled as he saw this, but Kisame only felt his adrenaline begin to rise up more. That is a bad idea in so many ways. Do you really believe you have the ability to take on 2S rank shinobi by yourself? Asked Itachi in an emotionless voice as he activated his Sharingan. He had been warned to not underestimate Naruto since so many had already and paid with their lives for doing so. What is it with you people from clans, said Naruto through gritted teeth, that you think that you are so much better than those who are not? I don't think in such a way. Don't lie to me, said Naruto with even more anger, for I detest liars. You are so much like your pathetic little brother. Don't you dare insult my family, growled Itachi. Oh, that's rich coming from the man who slaughtered them all. Enough talk. Kisame, I leave him to you. It's about damn time, said Kisame as he swung his sword at Naruto with enough force to blast the snow away from the immediate area. Naruto easily dodged the blow and tried to use his wires to bind Kisame, but in such cold weather like he was in right now, they were greatly weakened. Plus the fact that Kisame had toughened skin only made it all but impossible to use his wires effectively. So he had to use other skills that he had under his belt. Kisame used a water jutsu to summon up multiple sharks to attack Naruto, but his wires were at least effective to stop them in midair. But it was only then that Naruto realized that this was a distraction and that Kisame had done this so as to swing at his neck. Naruto didn't flinch as the blade made contact, but he did smile as Kisame's smirk disappeared from his face when he realized that the blade wasn't cutting like it was supposed to. What the hell is this? Asked Kisame angrily. Naruto smirked as he pulled one of his gloves off. Kisame watched in shock as he saw Naruto's hand change into a black-grayish color and used it to grab a hold of Samahata and grabbed a hold of it tightly so that no matter how hard Kisame pulled it would not budge. This is an ability known as the Steel Release, said Naruto with a sinister chuckle, and it is one of 5 that I possess within me. Naruto then slammed his fist into Kisame's face with enough force to blast him backwards quite a bit. Kisame let go of his blade as he was blasted backwards, to which Naruto stored away for later. He wasn't sure what he would do with it in the end, but that was a thought for later. But he saw Kisame get up from the ground and took one step to attack Naruto again, but he never took a second since his body blew up, leaving nothing but his legs in bloody snow. This was Naruto's explosion release, and with it he could make people explode by punching them, but the downside was that he had to have more powerful chakra than the person or object he hit. But what few knew about Kisame was the fact that the man had weak chakra and relied too much on his blade's ability to drain others of their own to power him up. Apparently this was a side effect of prolonged use of Samahata. For years after he had acquired his ability to use blood as a weapon through his blood transfusion, he had continued to research the means to transfer others as well. It took quite some time to perfect the means, with more failures than he was willing to admit, but with his power he was able to do so without negative effects of any sort. He did this since he had a goal in life, one that he could not complete as he was before, so he needed the power to complete it. The problem though was finding those with bloodlines he could experiment with, and he found the perfect subjects in the deceased bodies of several shinobi from all over. 4 extinct bloodlines now flowed through his body. In a sense they had been reborn through him and he would use them to accomplish his main goal in life. "So do you still think I have no chance?" said Naruto as he laughed as he saw Itachi begin to walk away a bit. "Just because you killed Kisame does not mean you can defeat me," said Itachi as he went through the proper hand signals and blew a massive wave of flames at him. Naruto simply used his cane to twirl the wind around him in a manner that extinguished the flames before they got too close to him. He then clicked his fingers, setting up one of his rooms before with a quick sleight of hand Itachi's eyes were in his hand. Itachi was understandably disturbed by this turn of events since he was literally looking at himself with his own eyes and used his hands clumsily to see if this was some sort of illusion. But he felt the empty sockets where his eyes used to be and began to shake in fear since this was not natural in any way. "You think because you have these eyes that you automatically win," said Naruto as he pulled out a vial and placed them into it. "Well, that didn't really work out for you now, did it?" Naruto then used his cane to smack Itachi hard across the face as Itachi tried to counter his strikes. But it was hard when he was watching all this happen through a warped perspective inside of a vial. Sure, he had trained for many different scenarios, but this was one that was never taught. But then again, what were the odds of this exact situation happening in the first place? Naruto kept smacking him around hard, all until he made Itachi cough out blood, which Naruto then dipped his cane into. Itachi felt as more of his flood was being sucked out of his body. Naruto used the collected blood to form the blade of a scythe and kicked Itachi over onto his back. "And so ends the legacy of Itachi Uchiha," said Naruto as he sliced off Itachi's left arm at the shoulder. The man screamed out in pain since it hurt like hell. This was yet another moment that he was not properly ready for since one does not train to cope with sliced off appendages like this. "My brother will avenge me," shouted out Itachi defiantly. "He will lead our clan to its former greatness." "Not when I'm done with him he won't," said Naruto as he cut the other arm off. "Why are you doing this? To be honest here, this is your fault for attacking me when I refused to join up with your group. This is why I try not to fight when I can avoid it since I relish in it when I do. I am a doctor, so I know how to make a person suffer in the worst possible ways before their end. But your brother, now that is another subject altogether. Leave him alone. He has done nothing to you." "Wrong!" shouted Naruto angrily as he cut off both of Itachi's legs with one swipe. It was only because of Naruto's room ability that was still up and going that Itachi was still alive, since he would have passed out from the pain and then bled to death if it wasn't. "Your brother mocked me for having no clan to call my own. He beat me bloody for so much as being anywhere near him since he claimed that I was so beneath him. He mocked me more when I lost everything I cared about in life, stating that some low clan less nobody such as me should take it as a sign and just end my own life. And to make it all worse, he used his fucking eyes that he unlocked somehow to try and manipulate me into killing myself with a broken shard of glass." "You lie. Sasuke would never do any of that. Remain in denial all you wish," said Naruto as he stepped off of Itachi's chest and picked up one of his amputated arms. This one had a summoning symbol on it. "But in the end it makes no difference to me. I will make your brother suffer and leave him a broken man. His death will not come by my hand, but he will surely wish it had been, just like you." Naruto said that last bit before he began to walk away from Itachi's stump of a body. "Where are you going?" asked Itachi as he wiggled his body around to try and do something, but he wasn't able to move so good with nothing but stumps where his arms and legs used to be. "Throwing you to the wolves as many have done to me," said Naruto as he continued to keep walking. He took the arm and placed it into a scroll to analyze later, as well as the Sharingan eyes. Itachi was blind and helpless in this situation since no one other than Kisame and Naruto knew he was even there. Yet Naruto was gone and Kisame was dead, so he was fucked. And to make matters worse, he heard growling from multiple sources around him. But since he was now officially blind, since the room was no longer in effect, he was unable to see what was making the sounds. But he wondered no more since the wolves that had surrounded his body charged forward and began to tear him apart to feast on his flesh as he screamed out in pain and horror. And yet, no one was around to hear him scream. "Current time. Dear Kami," said Haku, since that was all she could say as she heard how her boyfriend had utterly decimated the two shinobi that had come for him. It was true that she had seen Naruto fight and kill people in various ways, but this was a whole new level of gore that she didn't know he was capable of. Now, why most women would break up with such a man since he seemed to be insane, Haku had all but been raised by Zabuza, who was nearly as bloody as Naruto was when it came to killing, so it didn't bother her in the slightest. In fact, it made her smile more since she knew that those who tried to hurt her would feel his wrath and that was not going to end well for them. "I second that," said Zabuza as he heard Naruto finish the story. "I take back what I said on the bridge, kid. You scare me shitless most of the time. Glad to see that I can make someone of your reputation scared," said Naruto as he leaned forward on his cane since he was still standing this whole time as he told his story. "So what did you do with the parts you took from Itachi?" asked Haku curiously since she wanted to know why he would do such a thing. "Well, the eyes you can plainly see I implanted into myself, but not directly." "What do you mean?" "I essentially liquefied them to their genetic base level and then injected my eyes so that I could gain the ability to change my eyes back and forth as I wish since it makes it easier to use without the whole constant drain of chakra hindrance. I'm not like Kakashi of Konoha with his covered up one." "Didn't that hurt?" asked Zabuza as he winced a bit after hearing that Naruto had injected something into his eye. "Just the mental image alone was painful to think about." "It would have," chuckled Naruto, "if I had not experimented on myself a while back and tweaked my nerves so that I don't feel pain unless I want to, and boy let me tell you that was painful." "Stop," said Zabuza, who at this point had enough of hearing about this kind of stuff. "So now what do we do?" "Well, those scrolls one gave you make us all citizens of Spring Country, so let's head there and find a place to call home. Plus I can open a proper facility that people will come to instead of having to go to the people since it's becoming a bit of a nuisance sometimes and it would be nice to just relax in an office instead of just walking into a town and waiting for someone to come out of the woodworks and request aid." "But what use do you have for a building since this operating room of yours is in another dimension altogether?" asked Zabuza since Naruto had told him that a while back, but while he had been skeptical at first about it, but Naruto proved him wrong by showing that the place had no exits other than the door he could conjure up that went to so many different places that he had been before, so he had no room for argument since he couldn't deny the facts that were in front of him. "Simply appearances," said Naruto as he conjured up the forethought of door to lead them to an area near the capital of Spring Country. "But how are we going to afford a home? I don't have that type of cash just lying around since most of my funds went into staying hidden along with Haku and the Demon Brothers. I'll lend you the money to get a place of your own, but it will be your job to pay me back in due time or else I will shove your head up your urethra this time. Try breathing in your piss hole." Zabuza lost all color in his face as he heard this and simply nodded to say he agreed to the terms without question. He silently cursed himself though since he had repeatedly hoped for Haku to find a man strong enough to protect her since he did care about her enough, but this man far surpassed that bar he had set and had in fact broke it with his knee. But at least Haku was happy so he would keep his mouth shut. Now if only he could find a woman for himself to settle down with, he thought as he walked through the door, followed by Haku and then Naruto as he shut the door behind him. Mist Country. A red-haired woman was looking over a map of the area as she planned out the next battle. All of a sudden she sneezed for no reason, and she wiped her nose as she wondered just where the hell that came from. Iwa. Onoki was sitting at his desk sipping at his tea as he thought on present matters. He had just gotten a scroll that was sent every few months to register those that he was sending to the Chunin exams in another village. Now while this wasn't usually a problem for them since it was a common thing that happened 3 to 4 times a year, but what was worrying him was the fact that this time it was Konoha that was hosting them. He had not forgotten the fact that it was rude shinobi that tried to kill him as well as kidnap his granddaughter to most likely use her to breed more shinobi and kunoichi for her bloodline. Now what made matters worse was that the very same granddaughter of his was up for the Chunin exams alongside her team. But Onoki feared for her safety even though she was with a squad since they would be in enemy territory where many things could go wrong and he could legally do nothing if it did. Kuritsuchi had been looking forward to this for quite some time and had trained hard for it, so he was so very hesitant to tell her that she wasn't going for her own safety. Now if only she had someone who she trusted who was far more powerful to protect her. It was at that moment that he smiled to himself as he mentally slapped himself for not thinking of this before. He knew of just the person to help with this. Naruto, or as he was known throughout the land, the Surgeon of Death. The boy was extremely powerful from what he himself had been able to see, which wasn't a lot mind you, but from what he saw alone he showed that he had potential and skills that far exceeded any genin around. The boy was perfect since he was not registered to any shinobi village, nor was he a ranked shinobi, so he could easily pose as one if needed to be. Plus he was sure Kuritsuchi would love the chance to spend time with her savior if able. She had changed the day she had been saved by Naruto, since she had upped her training exponentially so as to not be put in a situation such as that one again, since it was very unlikely that Naruto would save her again like he had if it did. Yet while she trained herself day in and day out to become stronger, she would always blush or giggle whenever Naruto himself came to the village for things or to help heal those who paid him. Onoki saw the clear signs of a crush and thought that this would be the perfect opportunity to have them get to know each other. Who knows, maybe they would hit it off well enough and get married so the boy would join their village properly. That would boost their reputation immensely to have someone of his caliber within their ranks, but this was all wishful thinking really. So with a smirk on his face, he wrote out the same thing on several scrolls and called for his best hunter nin to come forward. He handed each of them a scroll and told them to hunt down Naruto and deliver the message he had wrote out. Konoha 2 weeks later, Minato sat alone at his desk, all the while deep in thought about the news that had been told to him just recently. He had been happy to see that his daughter and her team were back safe and sound from their mission, but he was pissed that things did not go as planned. It was true that he knew that the mission was far more dangerous than the client had mentioned thanks to Jiraiya's spy network, and so he sent his daughter and her team since they were some of the most powerful genin he had at the time. The plan was for them to aid the people of Wave, and then they would become so grateful for the assistance that they would agree to Minato's terms for a trading contract in honor of the help from their hero, which he had hoped would be Naruto. But that was not how things played out at all, since a third party had swooped in and ended the life of the tyrannical businessman Gato instead of any of the Konoha shinobi, so the people were grateful towards that person and not Konoha. Hell, they named the bridge after the man in gratitude. Sure, Squad 7 had been ambushed near the start of the mission, but they handled the Demon Brothers quite well without any trouble on their end, as well as the first fight they had with Zabuza before they were tricked by a masked kunoichi and his paralyzed body was taken to recover elsewhere. But when victory had been all but assured the second time they fought with Zabuza about to be killed by Kakashi, and the kunoichi he had with him restrained and nearly ready for transport back to the village so as to breed more of her bloodline, things had all gone to hell so very fast. And the name of the person who screwed with his plans only pissed him off immensely when he heard it. Naruto? Minato knew exactly who the boy was when he was told the name, and yet he kept his emotions in check so as to not give anything away. That boy had been a nuisance since he was born, since his mother Mocha had continuously requested aid from him to help them survive, but he did no such thing. He had impregnated the woman in an effort to acquire money from her rich family, not to spend his own on a child he didn't give two shits about since he was useless. Hell, he personally signed the paperwork to keep the boy out of the academy since he believed that the boy had no potential in the slightest and was even planning on having Danzo kidnap him to turn him into a rude shinobi so that the boy would simply disappear and his failed attempt at easy money would be forever erased from the public eye. But that never came to be because the boy had simply disappeared from the village of his own volition, and Minato couldn't be happier since now his wife Kushina would never just stumble upon high, and if the gods were truly blessing him he would simply die on his own. But now his images of the boy had drastically changed. What Kakashi and his squad reported to him was very troubling to hear. Not only was the boy not dead like he had hoped, but he had told Naruto of their relation to each other, which luckily for him he played it off as someone lying to get into her head as a form of distraction, and she bought it. He would have simply sent rude shinobi to secretly eliminate him, but the fact that the boy had a bloodline unlike anything he as well as anyone else had ever seen was puzzling. He had spent countless hours researching all known bloodlines, and while there were numerous ones, none of them involved weaponizing blood like Naruto had done on the bridge. He looked into the boy's family, since even though he was an unwanted bastard child to their name he still had their genetics and they couldn't change that, and found nothing of the sort. So where did he acquire such power? Orochimaru's attempts at transferring bloodlines came to mind, but that would only work if he had a sample of it to transfer, and this one was new altogether so there was no samples to take and experiment with. But to add the dressing on this suck salad, Naruto was the infamous surgeon of death that roamed the elemental countries and healed people. He was well liked all over, as well as the fact that he had no bounty on his head, so Minato couldn't just kill him since that would just be a waste of a rare bloodline. What he needed to do was find a way to lure the boy here where he had the home field advantage and capture him. Once captured, it would be fairly easy for him to have a Yamanaka to alter his mind to see Konoha as his home once more. But now he had to think about how exactly was he going to do just that. Spring Country. The past 2 weeks had been fairly busy for Naruto and his group. The three of them searched for their own places to live, with Naruto and Haku settling on a quaint little one-story house and Zabuza moved into his own apartment. Once settled in, Naruto had spent the rest of his money, except for his materials funding, which he kept separate at all times so as to not spend it by accident, to buy the furniture that was needed for not only both places, but a small office building he rented so as to officially have a place of business. He had the sign put up, and a bell placed atop the door that would alert him to anyone arriving. If he wasn't there then or was unable to get to the person in need, he had appointment cards that he placed in a container that stuck to the window outside that could be dropped into the mail slot so he could put them into his log. He changed the 1-week calendar he had visible since he posted it on the window as well as his available days every Sunday, and had a sign warning people that his hours were subject to change. In the week and a half since he opened the door to his new office, he had numerous clients appear for all sets of problems, each that he was able to heal with no problem. It was at this point that he figured that he needed a secretary, and he found a young orphan girl named Yuna who was looking to make money to survive. He showed her what to do, which was fairly easy, and he even renovated the back area which had been empty until now, to be alive in space so she had a place to sleep along with a mini fridge, a cot, and a hot plate with some dishes to use. Yuna was happy, which put a smile on Naruto's face since he liked to help. But today was different. Today Naruto had woken up from his slumber, unwrapped Haku's arm from around him since she was a bit clingy when they slept in the same bed, and did his usual morning routine to make himself presentable to the world. He took one last look at Haku, who was still asleep, and smiled since she looked as peaceful as she did in her underwear. Now one may think that these two have been screwing non-stop, but to be honest, the both of them were still virgins since they were not quite ready to take that plunge yet. In time they would be, but not quite yet. And it seemed that Haku was more ready than she was letting on since it seemed as though she was getting far clingier as the days went on and Naruto would always have to untangle himself from her. But today he went to his office and saw a scroll, several in fact, with the seal of Iwa's cage on them all in his mailbox which was outside the door. So he took them inside with him to read. He wondered what the old man had sent since this was an official scroll and not a personal message like you would normally get from people. He just hoped that it wasn't another attempt to ask him to join the village since he had explained multiple times to multiple people that he wanted to remain free to roam and help those who needed it. What he read made him raise an eyebrow since the request was strange. He wanted Naruto to take the place of one of the genin in Kuritsuchi's squad to protect her from those in Konoha who would use the event as an opportunity to capture her for her bloodline. Naruto read the other scrolls as well and saw that they were all the same thing, so he figured that Onoki had sent the same message with multiple messengers in an effort to find him faster. That was understandable since he was usually on the move, so it was fairly hard to track him down. Naruto thought about what to do for a bit before he made a decision. He had always meant to go back to the village at least once in his life to visit his mother's grave since he had left without saying goodbye to her. And now he had a valid reason to go back, so he would take it. Naruto activated the summoning seal that was on the back of his hand. Doing so summoned up a crow that landed on his desk. Naruto had used the seal that had been on Itachi's arm to summon up a crow a week ago and signed the contract with them. While they were at first pissed that their previous summoner was killed since they were attracted to a person with a dark aura of pain and hatred, they saw that Naruto's aura of such things far exceeded Itachi, so they were happy to call Naruto their new summoner. Naruto wrote out his response to Onoki's request, but on the condition that he could bring Haku along as well since she wanted to test herself in the exams as well. She had told him this a while back, that she was essentially born a missing nin since she was hated and missed for her bloodline and as such was never able to become a ranked nin or show others what she could do. So why not kill two birds with one stone here since he could do the job that was asked? Haku gets what he wants, and he can visit his mother's grave while in the village. So with that, Naruto opened up his logbook and checked out just who exactly he was helping today. Naruto was in his office sitting down and updating his logbook as he smiled to himself. He had just went and made a house call to a young boy no older than 5 years old who had traveled by himself for several days to find him. His mother had fallen ill, and the doctor they had was not sure exactly what was wrong with her. He had tried to do what he could, but it wasn't good enough, and he had told the boy that she was most likely going to die. And as to be expected from such a young child when they hear such grave news, the boy cried over the fact that he would lose his only parent since his father had died in a mine collapse a year earlier. One of the other patients in the clinic had offhandedly mentioned Naruto as the miracle maker that the world knew his as and how he could easily heal her if he was here to do so. The boy heard what the man had to say and was immediately out the door and soon the town itself in search of Naruto. But even though the town he hailed from was not that far from the spring capital, it was just that he was young and had a terrible sense of direction, so it took longer than it should. The boy had finally gotten the proper directions from an elderly man who himself was heading to meet Naruto for some medical help, and so he finally made it to his intended destination with the man's help. Once there, Naruto helped the elderly man first, who was having back issues that were quite easy to fix. Once the man was healthy and gone, he asked the boy about what exactly he needed. The boy explained that his mother was sick and the doctor was unsure as to why and so could not heal her from what ailed her. The kid opened his bag and dumped out a few rocks that were shining blue as payment since he believed that they were valuable and he had nothing else to offer up as payment. Naruto took one in his hand and quickly conjured up a lead container to put them in. He asked the kid where he had gotten the rocks, which the boy explained that they were mined in the tunnels that his father worked in no too long ago. Naruto explained to the young boy that the rocks were glowing because of radioactivity, and they were most likely the reason that his mother was sick. The shinobi world was unaware of such things, and to be quite honest Naruto was glad about it since if they somehow managed to find a means to weaponize it as people had done long ago according to Faust, the world would literally be set on fire since they would be used by one village or another to obliterate another. He saw that the boy was confused by that word, so he explained that the rocks were poisonous in the sense that being around it made you sick in a manner that doctors could not heal. He had seen the looks of worry on the boy's face, but had quelled his fear by telling the boy that he had the means to heal her, and went to go and get what he needed to heal her. Once all essentials were gathered, he piggybacked the boy back to his home since he was faster as well as had a better sense of direction entirely. Once he got there, he told the boy to remain out of the house, and to remain so no matter what he heard. The boy had nodded his head in understanding. Naruto had to decontaminate her of the radiation before he could operate on her in his operating room. He injected her with the serum to begin the process after warning her that it would hurt like hell. Once the medicine entered her body, she began to scream out in pain as she felt like her body was bathed in liquid magma. Her screams echoed through the town, which caused many people to come to her aid, but the boy was there to stop them from entering on the orders of Naruto himself. The medicine essentially made the radiation that had seeped deep into her body crawl to the surface. From there Naruto was able to simply drain it out. Once she was fully decontaminated, he took her into the operating room and once there he was able to remove as well as replace the damaged tissue on the organs within her. In no time at all she was healthy and ready to continue living like she had never been sick to begin with. Once healed, he gave her 2 weeks' worth of medicine to help her fully recover from any lingering effects. She had been thankful for him helping her, but was concerned since she had no money to pay for his services. Naruto was infamously known as one who made his patients pay in either cash or their lives, and she unfortunately did not have the cash. Naruto simply smirked at her and told her not to worry since he was not charging her for this. She asked him why, and he told her simply that he had lost his mother when he was 5 years old and was alone in the world. He didn't want the boy to suffer the same fate so he had healed her, but he warned her that he had a reputation to uphold, so tell people that she paid him or else he would be back. As he left, he told the boy that his mother would be okay, but before he left he asked for the rest of the shiny rocks so as to dispose of them properly so no one else got hurt. It took a bit, but the boy gave him all the rocks and thanked him for helping his mother. Naruto took the rocks and used his powers to grind them into a fine powder. For quite some time he had been working on a poison for an opponent he would face in the future. And while many would think that it was Minato he made it for, it was not since it was intended for another opponent entirely. He was missing the one piece to perfect it, and the radioactive stones had been just the thing to finish his deadly concoction. And now that it was completed, he put it in a special syringe and placed it in a special container that he then put into the freezer so as to preserve it. Once he finished up his little side project, he had returned home, and as such events had caught up to the present. Naruto had been waiting patiently for the reply from the Tsuchikage, and he was not disappointed in his long wait since the note finally came. Onoki had agreed to his terms, and requested that he arrive in Iwa as soon as possible so that they could speak about the plans for the upcoming Chunin exam they would be helping with. Naruto smiled as he told Yuna to mind the place and to let people know he was going to be gone for a while. He then pulled out a small stack of bills so that she could buy what she needed in his absence. Then he went home and told Haku that they were heading out to Iwa, and as he announced that he conjured up the door to his operating room as per usual and they walked through it. They stayed in the operating room for a few minutes, which wasn't really necessary at all since it only took 15 seconds for him to summon another door. Haku simply took this moment to kiss him passionately while they were alone, but in the end they stopped and stepped through the door that opened up not too far from Iwa itself. The guards on duty at the front gate saw the door appear and smiled since they knew who exactly it was that had made it appear in the first place. Naruto had a standing agreement with Onoki which was simply to never use the door to infiltrate the village, and he had free passage into the village whenever he wanted as long as he used the front door to do so. And to this day Naruto had done as asked since in all honesty he had no need to sneak into the village at all. He was not a spy for anyone since he was a neutral party in the politics of the world, being a doctor instead of a shinobi to any village. He only ever came to the villages to heal people incapable of coming to him as well as to buy medicinal ingredients. Naruto walked towards the guards as he twirled his cane in his hand, where he then handed one of them the scroll given to him and continued to walk towards the cage's office. Along the way he waved at the people who saw him as he walked towards his destination. A few people asked for his medical help, which he said he would, but as per usual it would cost them. But eventually he and Haku made it to their destination, where they saw Onoki smoking on a pipe. Naruto had prescribed his some medicinal herbs that were meant to be smoked so as to calm and relax the one who smoked them. This helped him to relax his body as well as clear his mind so as to think clearly and not stress himself so as to screw up his back again. "Hello Gramps," said Naruto as he walked into the room. He used his wires to pull out 2 chairs which he as well as Haku sat down on. "Hello Naruto," said Onoki as he tapped the ashes of his pipe into a small tray that he used to collect them. He was far too calm to respond to the "Gramps" remark since Naruto always made it towards him. Naruto respected him to listen to his rules when in the village, and that was good enough for him. Plus the herbs he smoked made it nearly impossible to feel anger for a while after he smoked them, so there was that too. "So we are here as requested," said Naruto with a smile. He had always respected Onoki since he had first met the man, since he was willing to put himself in harm's way to protect his family. He already lost his children, and so he took it upon himself to raise their daughter as best he can so she could grow strong and defeat anyone who would come after her in the future. "So where is our squad mate at right now?" "Ah," said Onoki with a smirk, "she should be here shortly. I had one of my men tell her to come here not too long ago." And as if right on cue, Kuritsuchi walked into the room, fully dressed in genin shinobi gear as well as a pack filled with essentials for the trip to Konoha. "I'm here and ready to go," said Kuritsuchi, who was giddy inside over the fact that she would be traveling with her crush and made plans to make a move on him during the trip. If all went as planned she would acquire him as a boyfriend, and nothing would stop her. "Has Akatsuchi gotten packed yet? I don't see him here ready to go." "Well, about that," started Onoki with a bit of a nervous chuckle. He had never gotten around to explaining that Naruto was in a relationship, so her plans to try and snag him into one for herself were not possible. "He will not be accompanying you for these Chunin exams." "So who is our third member?" asked Kuritsuchi with a raised eyebrow. She had already known that their third member was being replaced by Naruto, which didn't bother her so much, but to hear that the second one was being replaced as well came as a surprise. "Hello there," said Haku as she stood up and faced her before she politely bowed. "My name is Haku Momochi." "Nice to meet you, Haku," said Kuritsuchi with a smile as she bowed as well. Now while on the outside she seemed happy about this, on the inside she was absolutely livid. The plan was to try and seduce Naruto on the way to Konoha, and it would have been easy since the third person was supposed to be a male and now it was not. For all she knew, this bitch was trying to make a move on her man, and she would be damned if she let this pretty little bitch get what was hers. Haku saw the rage that was in her eyes as she made an educated guess on why exactly they had that in the first place. She knew that Kuritsuchi was in love with her boyfriend and was probably planning on trying to seduce him on this trip. Haku could only smirk as she saw this, since Naruto was already her boyfriend and this bitch could deal with it. "So now that you ladies have gotten acquainted as such," said Naruto as he clapped his hands together and stood up from his seat, "I am going to spend the day healing people while I am in town." "Shouldn't we be heading out towards Konoha?" asked Kuritsuchi in confusion. She was unaware of his ability to conjure doors so as to fast travel all over the elemental countries. People knew he had such an ability, since he was not hiding it from people. He just didn't tell everyone he met, and the only people who knew he was able to do so were his patients. "If we wish to make it in time, we need to leave by tonight." "Not really," said Naruto, "since I can easily get us there in about 15 minutes. "How?" asked Kuritsuchi with a look of shock on her face, since she had only ever known one person who could do something like that, and Naruto was not Minato Namikaze, so he was not capable of teleporting as far as she knew. "I have my ways," said Naruto with a shrug. "Gramps there knows how I can. So it's a bit surprising that you don't know about it. But you'll just have to wait until tomorrow for that." "So Gramps, is the usual room available? I have notified the hotel in advance so they know that you are coming," said Onoki with a smile. Every time Naruto came to Iwa, he stayed in the same room so that people knew where to find him while there. It wasn't their best room, but Naruto didn't really care for that kind of thing. He had grown up poor, so the room he was able to reserve was good enough for him. Even thought there was a single bed. Naruto was used to sleeping with Haku, so it was not a problem. "Good," said Naruto with a goofy grin. "Now if you will excuse me, I have some money to make and people to help while I'm here. So let's meet up at the front gate at 9 in the morning. That way we can eat breakfast before we head out towards Konoha." And as he said that, he walked out of the room to do as he said. Haku followed suit, since she was going to do a bit of shopping while here, since she had not been in one of the major villages in her lifetime and thought to take the opportunity to shop around while here. As they both left, Kuritsuchi groaned to herself since she had gotten up early to pack her stuff she would need, only to find out they weren't even leaving until tomorrow, so she had more time than she expected. But the groans quickly turned to growls as her eye twitched at the idea of another woman trying to take what she deemed as hers. She looked at her grandfather with anger in her eyes, since he had not told her about the women when the plans for the Chunin exam came up, and she was going to be fairly vocal about it. Naruto and Haku were already at the front gate of Iwa when Onoki and his granddaughter arrived themselves. Kuritsuchi's eye twitched as she saw Haku practically glowing as she stood there with a smile on her face, since she was in a fairly good mood today. "So where is the person who will play the part of our Jonin instructor?" said Naruto, while air quoting that last bit. "Well, my initial idea was to have Han or Roshi do it," said Onoki with a sigh, since it had been his first idea, but recent events had made him think otherwise. "But I don't trust those in Konoha to not already know of their status as Jinchuriki and try and capture them while there. I am not going to just hand over what villages kill people for so easily." Now while the world thought that Iwa was a village that hated their Jinchuriki like they were made to believe, that was the furthest thing from the truth. Their so-called hatred for both Han and Roshi was an elaborate cover story, the likes that had fooled the rest of the villages. They made it seem this way so that those who tried to offer them a better life were tricked and captured, so that they would know just who were the ones to send them in the first place, so to eliminate the threat at its source. And so far this tactic had worked, as the two of them stuck to themselves and had gotten strong in as they trained in isolation to sell the lie of hatred to others. "So who is our chaperone?" asked Naruto with a raised eyebrow. "That would be Eagle here," said Onoki as a masked Anbu appeared next to them and politely bowed. "Hey Brian," said Naruto casually, which made Onoki look shocked, since an ANBU's identity were kept secret to all but their commander and the kage of their respective village. So to hear someone who didn't even live in the village know one of their identities was a bit unsettling. "How do you know who this man is?" asked Onoki in all seriousness, since he hoped that this was not going to become a major issue in the future. "Simple," said Naruto with a shrug of his shoulders. "He was one of my patients here in the past. I have an eidetic memory when it comes to all my patients. I can't afford to forget a face in my line of business, since the medicine I prescribe to a lot of people is something that I alone know how to make." I plan to teach others such things in the future, but that's another thing altogether. So how many of my Anbu members do you know the identities of? Honestly, said Naruto as he thought hard about it, I have no idea. It's not like they tell me that they are one, I just recognize the body type, hair, and skin color to identify them. You don't have to worry about me divulging such things since I am no shinobi. I'm just a doctor and I keep confidentiality quite seriously since I have a reputation to uphold. I respect the rules of the places I go, but I personally don't care for politics and stay out of such things since I am essentially a nomadic doctor who helps all who are willing to pay me for my services. Well, as long as that remains true, then I have no problem, said Onoki as he breathed a sigh of relief. So now please keep my granddaughter safe from those who will most likely try and kidnap her. It shouldn't be a problem, said Naruto with a bit of a chuckle, when those who would even attempt to do such a thing hear that the infamous Surgeon of Death is in the village. Well, their eyes will all be on me and I expect no less than 3 attempts to either convince me to join their village or just straight up kidnapping. Kuritsuchi will be safe as long as I am around. Of that do you give your word? Asked Onoki with a smirk. You have my word, Gramps, said Naruto with a smirk on his own face. You know me all too well to cast any doubt on the matter. That I do indeed, said Onoki, so you should be on your way. You still haven't explained how we are going to get to Konoha so quickly, said Kuritsuchi since she was still wondering how they were going to get there. It takes at least 3 days of running to get to the village, and we are a day late in leaving. Well, we will simply walk through this door, said Naruto as a door materialized out of thin air in front of them. Out of the group only Kuritsuchi was surprised by this since she had never seen this ability before. Once through, we only need to wait about 15 minutes and then I can summon another one near Konoha since I have been there before. So you mean to tell me that you have a means of teleporting long distances like Minato from Konoha is capable of? In a way, yes, said Naruto with a quick shrug of his shoulders since he had heard this before from a few other people who had seen him use this ability. But while he is able to teleport fast and kill people with his Hirishin jutsu, I am only able to transport people into my operating room and then to anywhere I have been before. Sure, I have the advantage of not needing seals of any sort like he does, but my ability needs a bit of time to recharge between uses, so it's not really a thing that I use to fight people with. Oh, was all she could say since it made perfect sense to her once it was explained like that. This ability is mainly to get those hurt to my personal operating room, so it's no surprise that there is a bit of a drawback on its use. Most operations take about 20 minutes anyway, so I don't see it as a problem of any sort. Okay, said Kuritsuchi with a sigh. You made your point already, so there is no need to continue explaining it to me. Well then, said Naruto, who pulled the door open and held it for them all to enter, shall we be on our way? The group all entered the operating room through the doorway, and once inside the door vanished from sight, leaving Onoki standing there with a smile on his face since he knew that his granddaughter was in safe hands. 1 hour later, Konoha. Minato was sitting in his office as he had just finished up speaking to the various shinobi who would be in charge of security for the duration of the Chunin exam. He had just finished up all the proper paperwork that went with it and was just about to head out to do some last-minute training with his daughter when one of his shinobi rushed into the room right as he stood up to leave it. Lord Hokage, said the man as he kneeled in front of Minato, I come bearing news. Speak, said Minato since he was genuinely curious as to what the man had to say. The Surgeon of Death has entered the village. This news caused Minato's eyes to widen in surprise. For quite some time he had given his shinobi the order to try and convince said surgeon to join their village through either brute force or convincing. All the other villages were doing so, or at least they were the last time he checked. So he didn't feel in the wrong ordering his shinobi to do such a thing. He had Danzo try and capture him with the root forces he let the man use in the shadows, but even they failed to capture the man. Minato truly wondered if that was one of the main reasons that Naruto never came to Konoha for business as he did the other villages, but he was unsure of that. Now that the little brat was in his village, he would do all that he could to make him stay since the abilities to heal diseases deemed incurable as well as a bloodline that was so rare that Naruto was the only one to have it was not a thing he would allow to slip through his fingers. And as he dismissed the shinobi from his room, he used his intercom to have his secretary call in a specific shinobi for his plan. Outside, Naruto had separated himself from the other 3 people in his squad shortly upon entering the village and was at the moment walking down the street to find a specific store he hoped was still here from his youth, since if it wasn't he would have to find another to get what he wanted. As Naruto walked calmly down the main street, the memories of this place flooded his mind, and unfortunately his memories were about 95% bad. While on the outside he appeared to be having a good day as he twirled his cane, on the inside he was seething as the rage built up within him. One day soon, he would make those who ruined his childhood pay for what they have done. But eventually he found the store he was looking for, which happened to be a florist store. He went inside and had to suppress even more rage as he saw one of those on his everlasting shit list manning the counter. This bitch had screwed with him in his youth in such a way that affected him until he was 9 years old. She used her family's signature jutsu to enter his mind and screw with it in a way he could not defend against. Her mental attacks caused him nightmares of Ino's making that horrified him, but his mother had always been there to pull him from the darkness of his own mind. When she died there was no such help, and Naruto struggled to keep his sanity until the day he left. It was thanks to Faust that medicine was made to help him clear his mind when he was 9 so that he could finally have a good night's rest other than the usual nightmares that haunted him. He was finally able to dream of the good times he had with his mother, and it helped drive him forward to excel in his abilities. He would make Ino pay for her specific type of pain towards him, and he had the perfect means to do so. So right now he walked up to the counter and ordered a dozen daisies. He paid for his order of flowers without issue since Ino didn't really want to talk since she was having a bad day since her plans to try and get Sasuke to notice her were not going as planned, and now she had to mind the family store. Naruto took the flowers and began to walk towards the cemetery with them in hand. It may seem strange to see that the clan heirs did not recognize him at all from the past, but times had changed him for the better. When he was a child his hair had been long, unkempt, as well as ragged. His clothes were nothing more than patched together rags, and he was not one with a positive attitude since he was constantly put down by the other children who were his age. Now he was the complete opposite of his past self, and he had a much better self-image of himself now as he dressed better and took better care of himself. Naruto smiled to himself as he neared his destination since he felt like he was at peace. Over the years there had been a deep feeling to return to this village to properly say his goodbyes to his mother proper. But he feared what the village would do with him in the village since he had such an infamous reputation that many villages tried to obtain into their ranks. He knew very little about his mother personally since he only had so little time with her, but her journal, which he kept to this day, seeing that it was the only thing that he had of hers anymore, told him much about her that he never got to ask her. Daisies were her favorite flower, which had pissed off her family since they were the upper crust of the higher-ups within Fire Country and only enjoyed the most expensive of things. So to see one of their own like the one of inferior of the flowers pissed them off. Their family was taught from an early age that either you thought the same way as the rest of them or you were punished by the head of the household. Her own childhood had been hard as well since she was in a very abusive family, and it was because she refused to think like them that they were planning to marry her off to a man who was twice her age so that she would at least be useful to them by unifying the families together. So Naruto understood why she ran away to the man who had saved her since in her mind her savior was a better man than that. What made it worse was the act that the man was a well-known East man who had been married a few times before. Yet his wives had all, mysteriously, disappeared in time before they could tell anyone of the horrors they suffered by his hand. He knew this last part since the man himself had been one of his patients, and Naruto tortured him in his operating room as he made the man admit to all this while under the knife. That man never made it out alive from the table, and while he was a doctor and they took a Hippocratic oath to do no harm, he was the surgeon of death and had not done so. He then disposed of the man's entire body as well as his organs. While he would usually keep the organs for future transplants, but he could not in good faith allow so much as a single cell of that filth of a man survive in any sense. Naruto had finally arrived at his mother's grave, which was the same as it had been all those years ago. All it had was her name and year of death since no one really knew her enough to fill in the blanks. "Hello mother," said Naruto with a sad smile on his face as he set the daisies on the ground in front of her tombstone. "It's good to see you again after so long. I know I didn't say goodbye to you when I left, and for that I am sorry." Naruto sat down in front of his mother's grave and began to talk to it. He spoke of his adventures as well as his dreams for the future. He spent 3 hours there, and they filled his heart with joy as he was finally getting the closure that his spirit so desperately needed. When he was finally done, he said one final prayer to her before he got back to his feet. "I always remember the song you sang to me to calm me down when I had a nightmare," said Naruto as his eyes began to water at the memory of those nights, "and it is only fair that I sing it to you while you sleep as you did for me." As he stood there, the memories of those nights came to the forefront of his mind. His sleep was troubled in his youth thanks to Ino, since she basically injected nightmares into his head that he was forced to suffer through. His mother had been the one to help relax him when she sang the same song her own uncle had sang to her in her own youth with her own nightmares. According to him, it was a song that he had heard from his father and so on since the time before the shinobi came to be and the land was in the warring era. Naruto then began to sing the song that his mother had told him was sung to her by an uncle of hers that passed away when she was fairly young. Leaves from the vine, falling so slow, like fragile tiny shells, drifting in the foam, little soldier boy, come marching home, brave soldier boy, comes marching home. It was as he finished the song that he fell to his knees in sadness since he could not contain the tears he was holding back for years anymore. They flowed heavily from his eyes and fell off his face and hit the ground. "If only I could have saved you," whispered Naruto as his hands tightened into fists and he began to clench his teeth in rage. "I'll make them all pay for what they have done to us. I swear it to you, mother, I will make them all pay." He then got to his feet and wiped the tears from his face. He smiled once more as he took his hat off and placed it to his chest as he bowed towards her grave before he turned away and walked back towards the main part of town. He made his way to the hotel him and the other two were staying in, all the while mentally preparing for the next few days. The exams started in about 4 days, and he knew how quickly word spread in this village, so he was certain that there were people who knew he was here and would flock to him so as to heal them of the various wounds and ailments they had. Plus he just knew that Minato knew he was here since when him and his squad signed in, one of the guards had left when they began to walk away, so he was obviously reporting to Minato. But he would deal with that issue when the time came for it since he knew it was going to happen. Now he just wanted to head to the hotel room and rest so as to prepare for tomorrow. As he walked to his hotel room, he bumped into a person he was not expecting. "Sasuke Uchiha?" "Hey," growled Sasuke as he turned to yell at the jackass who dared to bump into him, "Apologize. You have just rudely bumped into an Uchiha elite." "Uchiha elite, huh?" said Naruto with a chuckle since hearing that was fairly humorous to him. He turned around to face Sasuke face to face, "But let's be honest here, you only got that title through process of elimination." Sasuke saw Naruto and fell backwards in fear since he remembered what happened the last time they met unexpectedly. His hands went instinctively to where his balls once were, and as he did, the memory of the pain inflicted upon his person by the man before him made him begin to sweat heavily. "I'm surprised that I bumped into you of all people here. But then again, you live in this village, so it's not too surprising when you think about it. Yet this presents a perfect opportunity for you, believe it or not." What do you want from me?" said Sasuke nervously. For most of his life he had been told that he was elite by many people including his father. Yet when his clan was killed by Itachi, he learned that he was not as good as him and he needed to train hard to bridge the gap if he ever wanted to avenge his clan in the future. But then he had faced Naruto, who easily beat him, maimed him by removing his balls, and shattered his dreams of avenging his clan by showing him proof of Itachi's demise. Sasuke may be many things, with arrogant as well as narcissistic being on top of the list, but suicidal was not one of those things. He knew that as he was, he had no way in hell to defeat Naruto and wasn't going to even try. He already lost his literal balls, so he didn't want to lose anything else of his. "Simply to return to you what I took," said Naruto with a smirk as he whipped out a glass vial in his hand. It was clear, yet filled with a clearish yellow liquid with 2 oval testicles floating in it. "What?" said Sasuke in shock since he was not expecting that response. "Like I said, I want to give these back to you." "Oh," said Sasuke, since in all honesty he didn't know what to say in this situation. "But let's back up a bit here," said Naruto with a smile on his face that was not friendly in the slightest. "While I wish to give this to you, these are not free in the slightest. What I hold in my hands is your literal future, since without these you will be the last of the Uchiha to exist." "What do you want?" growled Sasuke. He wanted to do nothing more than to take his balls back via force, but he just couldn't risk it with so much on the line. To give you the same chance that I did to be great and known throughout the elemental countries, said Naruto as he twirled his ken a bit before he slammed it down in front of him and leaned on it with both hands as he smirked at Sasuke. It may seem hard to believe, but I was born from nothing into nothing. I had not a cent to my name and lost my mother when I was 5, so I had no one to raise me. Yet even with the entire world against me, I fought on and conquered every challenge that came my way. You have done nothing more than coast off of the name of your clan for as long as you have been alive, and even though they are dead you continue to drag their name through the mud with your actions. So my price, which is non-negotiable by the way, is quite simple. I want everything of value that your clan has. All the money in your accounts, anything of value sold and the cash added to my fee. You are insane if you think I am going to pay that, shouted Sasuke. He was seriously pissed that Naruto had made such a demand of him of all things. True, said Naruto as he twirled his cane and held it behind his back with both hands, but you don't really have a choice in the matter. Look at it this way, you can either be the richest Uchiha in existence, but also the last. Or you can be the poorest one, and rebuild your clan into the way you wish it to be. I don't care which you want, since in all fairness I could go either way. Either I get paid or I get to live with the knowledge that I managed to make the Uchiha clan go extinct, and that is quite a claim to make in this world. So pay me what I want and I will restore your testicles back the way they were before I took them. Sasuke didn't know what to say here, since Naruto was telling the truth about the whole situation. But the silver lining to this deal is that you get to keep your clan houses as well as all the jutsu your family has, since unlike your clan I don't steal the hard work of others using those eyes of yours. You can literally say that when you yourself have stolen my brother's eyes. Actually I can, said Naruto with a chuckle, since in all honesty I only use these eyes when I perform surgery, since they allow me to see things that the untrained eye is incapable of doing. Sure, I stole his eyes, but at least I am using them for a good cause instead of copying others' styles. But to bring this point home, this is a one-time offer, and if you choose not to pay what I demand for your ability to sire the next generation, then I will destroy these right here in front of you so that you can watch your family weep at your foolishness. And how am I to know that you would do as you said if I pay you? I am appalled, sir, said Naruto as he held his chest in mock pain. I am a doctor, and as such I take my job very seriously. To state otherwise is quite a mistake, and as such I am tempted to say to hell with my offer and destroy your balls here and now. Wait, shouted Sasuke in worry that Naruto would follow through with his threat. I'll pay you what you ask. So it is a deal then, asked Naruto with a smirk as he held out his hand in an open palm. Faye pulled out a scroll that he unrolled and Sasuke saw that it was blank. Naruto pulled out a small vial of blood that he crushed in his fingers and then placed his bloody hand on it. The blood left his hand and swirled onto the scroll to form a contract that went as stated word for word. If you agree, then simply sign here. Do you have a pen to sign it? Asked Sasuke, who fairly freaked out so see a contract made out of the blood of someone. Oh yes, said Naruto as he pulled one out, right here. The contract states the deal as I have said it, but be warned that when the due date comes and payment is not delivered, your life is mine to do as I wish. And allow me to paint exactly how that would go. I will once again remove your balls, this time destroying them so there is no chance to get them back. Then I will remove your eyes, slash up your face in a manner that will scar you beyond recognition. Then I will give you the most painful change that has ever happened in the history of the operation. You will get to live the rest of your life as an abnormally ugly woman for the rest of your life, and I get to laugh about it since all you had to do was pay what was owed in full. I'll pay, said Sasuke as the color in his face disappeared as he heard what Naruto would do if he didn't pay. He then took the pen offered and signed his name on the line where it was supposed to go. Once he signed, Naruto made it disappear in a sleight of hand, and with a click of his fingers made the door to his operating room appear beside them. Well then, if you would kindly step through this door, we can get this whole operation done within 15 minutes. Then you will have until the end of the Chunin exams to pay me in full. And as he stated, he replaced Sasuke's balls within 15 minutes before he sent Sasuke on his way. Naruto continued on his own way back to his hotel room with a smirk on his face as he did. Naruto had done as he had said he would, which was to restore Sasuke's balls back to the way they were before he took them from him back in Wave, and he had done exactly that. What he never mentioned to Sasuke was the simple fact that he was sterile from birth and replacing his balls would not help him sire children in the future. Sure, Naruto could have easily fixed it, but he wouldn't on the account of the hell Sasuke put him through as a child. The asshole had literally used his freshly awakened Sharingan against him and had tested its genjutsu abilities on him to feel such great sorrow at the loss of his mother that he had taken up a broken piece of glass and nearly killed himself with it. Naruto looked back on that day and still wondered what had broken him free from that illusion so that he still lived, but in all honesty he was just glad to be alive today. Naruto could only laugh at the fact that Sasuke had just signed away his fortune so easily, and the smirk was still on his face as he smacked into someone since he was not paying full attention to where he was going. "Sorry about that," stated Naruto as he took his hat off and placed it on his chest as he respectfully bowed in apology. "My mind was elsewhere at the moment." "No problems, young man," said the voice of an older male, but then the voice turned to one of a bit of surprise. "Wait a minute. Are you the one called the Surgeon of Death throughout the lands?" "Why, yes I am," said Naruto as he placed his hat back on his head, "and you would be." Holy shit. Naruto couldn't help but shout that last bit since in all honesty he had not expected to bump into this person out of all people. Standing before him was none other than Jiraiya the Sannin. "Whoa there kid," said Jiraiya with a bit of a nervous chuckle. He had dealt with fanatical fans of his Icha books in the past, and if this ended up like any of those other times then he would have to make a quick run for it since he was not going to end up tied up in some random guy's basement again. He broke free of course, but dear Kami that day still haunted him still. "Sorry about that," said Naruto as he rubbed the back of his head sheepishly since it was a bit embarrassing to do that. "It's just a surprise to see you of all people here. I am a fan of your book, and if it is not too much to ask would you please sign my copy?" "Sure thing kid," said Jiraiya with a smirk of his own now adorning his face since he liked to meet his fans who wanted his autograph for his work. He whipped out his pen to sign what he assumed was yet another Icha book, but he stopped cold when he saw what was actually presented. Instead of an Icha book there was a fairly well-kept copy of his first book, The Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Shinobi. "This is my favorite book," said Naruto proudly. "My mother would read it to me every night, and she even named me Naruto after the main character. She said she did so since she knew that I would make a name for myself in the future, and damn was she right about that." Jiraiya took the book from Naruto's hands and began to cry anime tears. This was his first book he ever wrote, but it never sold well and because of that he went on to write Icha instead which sold far better. To finally meet someone who appreciated his first published book was heartwarming to him. He signed it with a smile on his face, which then Naruto took it back and thanked him for it. "Thank you very much," said Naruto before he sent the book away, "and as a proper token of my appreciation of this amazing book, I am offering you the one-time offer at a major discount of any surgery of your choice that I can perform. I would say free, but materials cost money and I can't get some of them for free." "Well that is nice of you kid," said Jiraiya, "but I don't really." "Wait a sec. What is on your mind my good man?" asked Naruto with a grin on his face. "Well there is one thing I wish to ask about, but I feel kind of embarrassed to ask about it." "Ah," said Naruto with a chuckle, "I know exactly what it is that you wish for. And there is no need to feel ashamed about it. Many a man has come to me to fix that very problem, and I have done so to all who pay me what is owed. Now I charge my how much I need to enhance it, so just how much do you want it to grow?" "Wait," asked Jiraiya in surprise since he didn't actually expect Naruto to say he could fix it. "You can make it bigger?" "Why yes I can," said Naruto with a click of his finger. The door to his operating room once again appeared next to him. "There are a few tests that need to be run to determine the maximum length your body can handle, but the end results are well liked." "How much will this cost me?" "Like I said, it depends on the change in length, but you are getting a steep discount so there is no need to fret there. Now follow me and I can perform the few tests needed to get you on your way to pleasing the ladies." Jiraiya could only cry even more anime tears as he heard those words and made his way through the door as asked. What neither of them were aware of was that they were being watched by someone from the rooftops. This person was none other than Kushina Uzumaki herself since the boy piqued her curiosity. Her daughter had told her about what had happened on the bridge in Wave, and how he had called her his sister which made no sense since Naruto was an only child. Kushina had been in agreement in thinking the same way as Minato with the logic of the man just trying to mess with her by saying that. But now the boy was here, and her thoughts changed as she had seen him walking the streets by himself. She saw him go to the grave of a woman who he called his mother and saw as the tears flowed from his eyes. And the more she observed the boy, the more she could not deny his similarities to Minato in a sense. So soon she would seek the boy out herself and get the answers to these questions that were forming in her head.